Welcome everyone to another week of the Football Show on the Global Sports Channel. I'm your host, David Barbash. Welcoming back my pal and co-host, Darren McCauley. Welcome back, Darren.
Thanks for having me, David.
Yeah, good to see you again. And we have a special guest this week. I'm really excited. Yael Averbuch, ex-member of the US women's national team. And I feel pretty connected because I'm living up the road from her old alma mater, University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. I'm about 15 minutes away. You were captain over there, I think. A couple of times you were captain over at UNC at Chapel Hill, I believe, right?
Yeah, for a couple of years. So I miss it down there.
Yeah, well, welcome, first of all. And we're excited to have you. You've got an extensive background. You started playing, gosh, you were in the, I think what I have down here, the under 16s, the under 17s, the under 19s for the US?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for having me on. I'm excited for the conversation. But yeah, I was very fortunate to have been part of a lot of the youth national team programming, kind of at every stage along the way. So really took, in some ways, pretty traditional path of knowing I wanted to play at the highest level pretty early on and really trying to make it at each point along the way.
Who would you say was the most influential along the way? Because you didn't go the traditional route. You didn't play for your local high school. You were up there in Montclair, New Jersey, I believe, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And it is true. I made some different decisions along the way, including I was the only girl on an all boys team for a while, which was kind of a funny experience during the middle school years when it's most awkward to do that. And then, as you mentioned, I didn't play for my high school team, but now I realize more and more I had wonderful coaches and mentors as a young player and all the way up. So starting with my parents at home, who are both, they didn't know anything about soccer, but lifelong athletes, long distance runners themselves. And then early on, I mean, I had phenomenal coaches and guides who actually a number of coaches from England and then really all around the world who just knew the game so much better than anybody who was living here in New Jersey otherwise. So I had people steering me really well as a young player.
You know, it's funny because I was a long distance runner. In middle school, I played left wing in my middle school team, but I'm built for long distance running. So I went and got a scholarship in the US for 10,000 meters and 5,000 in cross country. And so probably did a lot of the training that your parents did. And now with the apps that there's out, you know, Strava, I can look at my old teammates, even though I'm in my mid 50s now. And it's just like, okay, what are you doing? Let me beat that workout. I'm going to do the same workout and I'm going to go faster. And you can look at, it's amazing. You could just look at the elevation, you could look at splits, and there's so much you can monitor now with even the smartwatches. It's just incredible. It's absolutely incredible. So it was fascinating to see with the Technique Football app, what was your inspiration for that? And also the timing of it now, I would think with COVID, with a lot of people like being affected playing, that it's almost like a perfect time for this app because you're going to have more time where maybe some of your playing time has been broken up and you've spent more time training by yourself. This is the perfect time for this app. So I'd like you to maybe explain to our audience a little bit about your inspiration for the app and do you think it's more applicable now than ever before?
Yeah, so it's interesting. A lot of people now are becoming really aware of the value of what you do on your own, but really had the idea for the app, you know, it's now about 4.5 years old. And it comes from a lot of what you just mentioned is that I actually did some reading about the company Strava and how, you know, everybody can be doing their training, whether it's cycling, running, whatever it is on your own, but there's this community who's kind of competing against one another and always seeing where they stack up. And I remember as a young player, a few things that really impacted me. One, I did have the guidance in terms of coaches showing me, hey, go home, work on this. Next time I see you, I want to see how well you can do. And I already have an obsessive personality, but I was just obsessed. There's no way I was going to see that coach next time before I could do whatever juggling combination or strike the ball the way they showed me or whatever it was. So there's that. But then I remember as a young player always thinking, okay, so I'm working really hard. I'm on this route, but what if there's a player out there in Texas or California or some other country even who's just doing something so much better than me or something I can't even imagine? So from that, I had the idea to create this blueprint for players to follow, but something also where they could match up against other players on our leaderboards. So kind of all of that in one. And yeah, during this past year, I think everybody gained an awareness for all the creative ways that you could train on your own, even if it's literally in your house, in your backyard, shoveling off some snow in your driveway. But the reality is that's the stuff that if you want to be top in any field, you have to be doing that stuff, the daily work on your own, regardless of if you're able to train with your team or not.
That's great. Now, Darren's a player, right? Currently playing in Australia, and having played in Northern Ireland and also in Scotland as well. Darren, from a player's perspective, what questions do you have for Yael? Because I think as a player, you probably have a keen insight to how this could be of benefit.
Yeah, I think it's great. Look, I'm not an app person. I'm so old school. But I must say it is one of the best apps I've ever seen in terms of how simple it is and how straightforward it is to look at the different programs, from the mobility to the mindset to the technique. But how long did it take you to develop it? Because there's so much in there. How long did it take?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I do want to say too, I'm not an app person either. Like in my mind, this was all the stuff that I think a lot of players now think like, oh, we just knew to do this this is what you do on your own. You understand, and if you have a weaker foot, you go out and you work on it, striking, repetition, whatever it is. So I actually am all for players figuring this out without the use of an app, but just the reality today, I think, is a lot of players don't know what to do. They're on their phone anyway. So it's a little bit of meeting people where they are. And really, to be honest, I did not set out to create an app. I was mostly looking at how can I share training ideas with players and link a community of people who want to work on these things regularly. So when I first started it, we built like a very basic first version. And I always joke with people because that was 4.5 years ago. And there were things on my list of must-haves in the first version that we still haven't built, actually. So I've learned a lot about what it takes to build a product. And it's very much a work in progress. So it took initially about 6 months to get the first version, but I'm not joking when I say every single day since then, we've been working on it still, whether it's the training content part of it or the actual app and its functionality. So it was quite an unintended side project that became much more than that.
I had a question for you, Yael. How much of this evolution of the app was feedback from the coaches or players that helped you versus the people that were using the app in the early phases saying, hey, I like this, but this is something that you could add?
Yeah. So actually a lot of the feedback, we do get a lot of feedback of people looking at it, either who are using it or who know me and understand the game and are experts in their field. So we do get that, but actually a lot of the feedback we get comes through just watching how people use it and hearing the questions they ask or the things that, it's been really interesting for me. A few times I've watched somebody just go through a training session and I realize a lot about it because I'm like, whoa, that wasn't what I intended to have them be doing or whatever. And there are benefits to everyone, it being accessible for everyone to follow a program like you're with an individual coach, but there are also the drawbacks of making sure that it's not just about doing the work. It's also, especially in this sport, a lot of it has to do with how you do things. So being able to, a lot of the feedback that we've taken has not been stated to us, but it's with ensuring that players understand how to train with the proper intensity and intention rather than just logging time.
True. Do you want to maybe go through for our audience that maybe has no clue about Technique Football and just take us through the app, the basics of the app, how it helps players and what segments, or if you basically segment it down, the app itself, all the different features?
Sure. So the basis is that the app guides players to train, to track their progress, so to have an understanding of setting a goal and how you go about it each week, and then to compete with other players on leaderboards. So in the most basic level of the training, we have a number of different areas of training. The bottom line is it's all individual work that players can do at home on their own with very minimal space and equipment. So there's a new training session that goes live each week. That's all technical work. So just a player, a ball, maybe a few cones, sometimes not even. And then there are some other aspects that we've added in over time, like mental training, some more functional, like shooting and finishing training sessions, physical work, so speed and agility, mobility type things, some goalkeeping work. So there's really, players can go in there and it's like you're with a personal coach. It takes you through a session. And then as you go, you can set a weekly target. Like I remember as a kid knowing that I wanted to get 7 to 8 hours a week of quality training. So if my team trained for 3.5, 4 hours, and then I had my game on the weekend, I knew that I needed to piece together an extra 2 to 3 hours. So you can set kind of a target each week and get reminders to help hold you accountable, and then see also what other players are doing on the leaderboards to maybe spark a little bit of the competitive drive.
That's what I love. I mean, even with running with Strava, I just love that competitive edge, and competing against other people around the other side of the world is amazing. What would you say so far? Where have you seen most of the use of the app? Have you seen it, a certain percentage in the US, globally, in other countries so far? Is it largely domestic, or have you got a now branching out and getting overseas feedback on the app as well?
So we do have some really interesting and fun countries do pop up on our leaderboard. So I think at one point and this is not an updated statistic, but we had players training in 47 different countries. So really it's cropped up in a lot of places, but primarily like the large majority are American players. And it's a combination of individuals who just find us and download the app from the App Store, as well as a lot of teams and clubs will sign up to offer access to their members. So we kind of have two branches of the business. One is going straight to the individuals, and the other are, youth clubs, almost the strong majority in the US.
Is there an average age that you've got in terms of the data that you're getting back, an average age of the user so far?
Yeah, I think so. The average is probably around that 12 to 16-year-old, but actually it might be a little misleading because we really do have a pretty large span of, we have this one player who started when she was 6. Now she's 10 or 11, but so we have some younger players, and then we actually have some. We actually was just speaking to a former figure skater who now plays in adult leagues, and she's definitely not preparing for any sort of professional career, but has wanted to be a better player in her co-ed league. So she's now training using Technique and has done a considerable amount of training using the app.
That's amazing. Yeah, I was going to ask Darren before ask you to pop another question. Mike, I think Mike's you're normally with us, and he's the president of his local side in Australia in the Melbourne area, and he plays. Is it the over 35s? He plays, Darren.
Mike personally himself?
Yeah, is he play in an over 35s league?
Oh, I'm not sure. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'd love for him to to check out the app, and what's any more thoughts, Darren, in terms of, as I said, you being a player? I know obviously you're not an app type of guy, but there's so much value that I see in the app. Any other questions that you might have for Yael? I think that could help.
Yeah. So you mentioned the importance of mentors throughout your career. And on the app, No, I think I've seen something about mentality videos. I didn't check it out. I checked out more the physical side of things. Um, but is there a section on the app that has um, guidance and advice for certain psychological situations? For example, how do you deal with an argument with your coach? How do you deal with being on the bench? How do you deal with getting setbacks, things like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I know as a younger player, I wish I had that kind of guidance because I did not. That was the one area I think I had great mentors. Like, here's what you do technically, here's what you do physically, you watch the game, all this. But like the mental side for me, I think was a huge gap throughout my career. So we do have some mental training in the app. It's actually, I really like your idea that you just offered, so I might write it down. It's not as specific as like you're on the bench. Here's how you should respond, but it's kind of what we've done is we've geared it towards more general moments, like maybe you feel a little bit nervous before a game or after a game. How do you win, lose, good performance, bad performance? How do you kind of move on and refresh mentally? We have some pro players who have shared like their insights on how to be a dominant center midfielder, or for a goalkeeper, how you stay ready for your big moment, those type of things. So we're working to build that out, and I actually really like what you offered because I think those are the real things that happen. Like, how do you come back from an injury? How do you, as you mentioned, maybe you get in a disagreement with your coach? How do you deal with that moment? So hopefully we can expand our guidance to include some of those.
Great question, Darren. Yeah, I was watching one of your videos on YouTube where you were doing a meditation, almost like a yoga meditation session. And I think Darren brings up a good point on the mental side of sports. Here we're talking about football, but that can apply to any life situation, as well as even with running, because running tends to be more of a mental sport, more mental than most sports you get in here. It's sort of you versus the course. It's not much of a team sport unless you're doing cross country. So what do you see about what's the next evolution to technique football, and how can you see artificial intelligence influencing the future?
That's an interesting train of thought, because personally, I always have this battle. I think that unlike some sports, there are certain things you can measure in the game of soccer or football, and there are certain things you just can't measure. Like and where measurements or numbers could be misleading. So I'm always really careful with this, because I remember as a player, the worst thing to me was when like some GPS data or heart rate data would be taken and manipulated in a way where I was like, that's not what happened in the game. Like, that's not indicative of what's true. So we've kind of discussed, what are some next levels with going that direction. Honestly, I think that part of learning to train and play is the feeling of it, and being able to know and assess yourself if you're doing it right because of the result. And like a cool thing about, I think, the game in general is that there's not one right way to do anything. There are some, in general, techniques that work, and most people do that way. But if you watch even the top players in the world, everybody has their slightly different technique. And if you're able to do something consistently and it's successful, then it's right. So I'm kind of a little old school with this stuff, where it's like I'm all into technology being a vehicle to give a training plan or to allow connection through community, but I don't know for me where the line is in terms of artificial intelligence. One thing we do have on the horizon is the ability for players to capture video to get feedback from a coach. Oh, nice. So I think that for me, it's really important, like I mentioned before, is that if you're training really diligently and doing everything right, then the amount of training does matter. You need to be training consistently. It needs to be on a weekly basis throughout the year to really improve. But what we're trying to teach young players is like, what does it look like to actually do it right and to approach it with the body language, the focus, the intensity you need. So I think that adding in the ability for them to capture video and show it to a coach, or even look at their own video and look at a demonstration video, is really instructive, because they can see like, oh, whoa, that doesn't look like what it looked like or what I felt like I was doing. So that's kind of the next frontier for us, is allowing that feedback through just a player being able to watch themselves or send it to a coach to give some notes on what they did.
That's really fantastic. I think Darren, have you seen that before, Darren, in terms of that, having the ability to send in your own video of yourself practicing or training and getting feedback? That seems valuable to me as an outsider I'm not a professional footballer. I was an elite athlete in long distance running, but not as a footballer. What's your take on that, Darren? I think it's a great asset.
Yeah, I think it's extremely valuable. The ability to watch yourself back. Sometimes we have it in games, but on a training session, to watch yourself back individually is actually very rare. If you have someone that you're training with, or your parent, and they're taking videos of you, or you've got a tripod and you can watch yourself back. There's a little bit of hassle setting up these things or getting someone to video you, but absolutely the value in seeing where you're going wrong is really, really important.
I was going to ask you both, actually. This is to Yael. When you're in football, normally when you get this feedback, a lot of the times I see when I'm watching at the beginning of a football match, a lot of it's group sessions and group training, passing, and so forth. How much when you're in, at, for instance, KC, Kansas City, how much of it is it mostly group training, or do you have, how much percentage of it is one-on-one with coach or trainers?
So I can let Darren weigh in on this too and see if he agrees with this, but I think it really depends on what level you're at in the game. And I know quite often growing up, I had a lot of more of the individual and one-on-one instruction, because when you're on a youth team, especially if you're not part of like an intensive academy system getting up to a high level, you have a team training sessions 2, maybe 3 times a week if you're on like a really good team, and a game on the weekend. So there's a lot of time in between where if you want to be good, you can't just be taking days off. But at the professional level, quite often you're playing every day with a team. And so you may show up early or stay after and work on a couple, like fine tune a couple things, but you're not really spending tons of time individually. There may be some areas of a training session where you break off into kind of functional groups to work on a position specific type exercise. But really by that point, the bulk of the individual work, I think, gets done kind of to get you there.
That sort of makes sense. And I guess that sort of backs up where the average age, that developmental stage, that critical stage, is where your average age is at right now. But I also see it benefit for even somebody my age that maybe, if I was playing in a local league here, because in the Triangle area where I'm at in North Carolina is a big interest and a big participation level in football, or soccer as they call it locally here, Any other questions, Darren, that you want to ask Yael before we sort of get to wrap up? But I wanted to, have you maybe provide some other questions that maybe provide some keen insight from your background, again, being a footballer, yeah?
No, I'd just like to add more of a statement to what Yael said about the individual training. I know in the professional teams I've been at, there's never been an individual, not 99% of the time, there's never been a one-on-one session like with a coach. Because like she says, usually if you want to improve in a particular area, you'll hang back at the end of session and practice your own thing. But I think as the years have gone by, with social media, people have seen what professionals are doing outside of the contact time with the clubs. And really, if you're a professional, you should be having someone who's outside the club who can take you for a one-on-one. It's vital. And I actually think all professional teams should have one person who's dedicated to specifically one-on-one training, be it one-on-one with a defender or midfielder or striker, whatever position it is. I think it's so important to get that contact time. And it doesn't work for every player. Some players are all for it. Some players, their personality, that just doesn't suit them. That's not their thing. But I know for me, I'm a huge fan of it.
So I would assume that if the majority of the people listening, our listenership, are not professional level football players, they could really benefit from having this, where they're able to almost get a one-on-one partner, send in that video, or right now work on the training tips, work on the agility drills, work on the tricks, and then compete against other people around the world to try and better themselves. I know if I had that app when I was running in the 80s, I was I was a decent 10K run. I was 29, 20 in under sub 30 in the 10K in university, but I probably would have run faster if we'd been competing with an app and we know what the other teams were doing training wise, and we could try to outperform them, And so I think this app is absolutely brilliant. What would you like to say to the audience in terms of what are the most important things that you'd like to leave our audience with about the app itself and just overall your philosophy when it comes to football and sport in general?
Yeah, I think, the bottom line is that if you have the ambition to get to the next level in whatever it is you're doing, you have to have a plan that goes down to the daily work. And I think that's what a lot of people miss is they have this long-term goal and maybe even a shorter-term goal of what they want to do this year or in a couple months, but it comes down to what you're actually going to do each day. And that could even mean today I'm going to rest and recover, but it has to be intentional every single day. And there's no time to waste. Like, you should be starting now if you have this goal. So whether it's, you just want to be a little bit of a better contributor on your team, you want to make the A team and you're on the second team, you want to play at the professional level, whatever it is, to set the big goal is great. And then it's important to break it down even further to what you're going to do each month, each week, and literally each day.
And it's great. I saw the app when I was watching one of the videos that you'd done, because, on YouTube, if somebody wants to sort of check out and see some of these sessions, it's great to get an idea. And then, of course, you can go on to Technifootball, is it technifootball.com, is it?
Yep.
What's the best way for people in terms of on social media and also the app? Could you share some of the places that you could get information about the app itself?
Yeah, so technifootball.com is kind of the hub. You can go to the website and it links to all the social media and a place where you can download the app. But really, if you just want to go into your app store and download the app, you don't have to enter any payment information. It's just a 1 week, totally free. I hate when they try to trick you with the stuff like that. And you can just try it. But then on social media and stuff, it's all Technifootball. That's the handle on whether you're on Twitter, Instagram, wherever you want to look. And we do some fun stuff to try to inspire and educate players, parents, coaches. So if you're interested, definitely check it out. And hopefully you'll find some value, whether you decide to train consistently with the app or not.
Well, we certainly appreciate it. We're actually, Darren and I, we were talking about this the last couple of weeks with Mike. Mike is heading up something called the Global Athletes Council, because obviously, you've got these big organizations around the world like FIFA, the International Olympic Committee, and they're very powerful federations and councils. But sometimes the athletes' interests aren't necessarily represented in a great way or an equitable way. And so we're going to be trying to get the rights, because it's the 1% that are making great money. The Ronaldos of the world and Messis of the world are making great money, but there's a lot of athletes that are not. And as Darren brought out also about the mental health side of it, 2,000 athletes committed suicide in the US last year alone. And that's pretty profound. So there's also loveathletes.com. We're putting together a platform that will bring to the forefront help on every single level, from remuneration to mental health to coaching to assistance to job opportunities and so forth. And we're going to provide that. So check that out as well for your own family and any of the athletes that because it's a big athletes community out there. And we'll be doing this LinkedIn style platform. And it's not just for athletes, but also for coaches, because you mentioned you work with coaches as well. So we'd love for you to potentially check that out if you want to be part of that. That would be fantastic. We really appreciate your time. Darren, is there something that you'd want to say to Yael before we say goodbye just temporarily, hopefully?
Yeah, look, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. And just a quick question. How hard has it been for you to transition from player to coach within the last few years?
Great question.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I do want to say I really appreciate what you guys are doing, because I think the mental health aspect is so important. Like, everyone just assumes an athlete is just strong and physically strong mentally, but it's like, we're humans and go through really tough times. But, and speaking to that, I think the transition away from playing at a really high level is something that a lot of athletes really struggle with. I know for me, I didn't intend to stop playing. I actually had some health issues that caused me to step away. But what I would say is the more I would recommend to any athlete, even, I mean, maybe not the top level making multi-millions, but maybe even the more you can have where you're developing your brand and who you are and stuff on the side, the more helpful it is to feel the freedom to step away when the time is right and not be totally left out, kind of in the dark. It's not just about money. It's about the financial stability, but it's also about the mental stability of having something you can be ambitious about building that's off the field. And for me, that was crucial because my entire life was dedicated to what I did on the field and fine-tuning myself as an athlete. And it's really tough to be left without that feeling. And so for me, growing my business has been a very similar feeling, but I don't need my body. I don't need to be out doing it on the field. So if I got injured, I was sick, whatever it was, I can sit and I can still do it. So I would recommend for people not to wait on starting something, even if it's just building your social media, doing some engagement with fans, taking furthering your education on the side, whatever it is. It's because it's so healthy to do mentally while you're still playing, because it's not an easy thing, and it's okay to also for people to ask for help with it, because it's not easy and it can be depressing, quite honestly.
Well, and I'm sure it's a great question, first of all, Darren, and thanks for that. And I'm assuming that it makes it a little bit easier to have that support of your husband with a like-minded partner that has the similar goals and is a support mechanism, and you're a support mechanism for each other.
Yeah, certainly. And we do have, the game is a very central part of our life. So while I stepped away from playing, it's, I don't feel like I'm, not around the sport, which is really nice.
Well, I want to thank you on behalf of Global Sports Channel, our audience, for taking time out of your day. We very much appreciate that. I'm sure, Darren, you can echo that yourself.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. It was great to hear from you.
Yeah, thank you both. Appreciate the conversation. It was good to meet you guys.
Nice to meet you. And hopefully, if you're up for it, we'll come back on when you feel that, you'd like to jump in and talk about some EPL games. We'd love it. We'd love it.
Yeah. I'll be back at some point to do that.
That sounds great. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Take care, guys.
Take care. Well, guys, that was lovely having Yael on, and we are really appreciative. We're going to jump right into the games of the week, Darren. Tuesday was up. It was the Champions League games, of Man City on a tear lately. 2-0 winners against Borussia Mönchengladbach. 4-0 on aggregate. De Bruyne and Gundogan once again. How many times have we in the last few weeks talked about Gundogan? I don't know if there's... I don't know this season, if there's been, I've got to look at the stats, if there's been a midfielder that has scored more goals recently than Gundogan. He is absolutely on fire. One of my favourites. And De Bruyne, I think, having him back healthy, what depth. We've talked about this umpteen times. Anything you want to add about Man City looking good in the Champions League? Do you think they're favourites or one of the favourites?
I think they'll be one of the favourites. And yeah, Gundogan, he must be in double figures now. I checked it a few weeks ago when we were talking about him, and it just shows how good Guardiola is as a coach. He seems to have changed Gundogan as from a deep line midfielder to someone who's almost like a Lampard type. He's like getting on the end of things that he shouldn't get on the end of, and he's scoring. So unreal, brilliant work, and De Bruyne, world class.
Yeah, I mean, De Bruyne he has such vision. He picks out players. He sees things that other people don't see. And I think the best players in the world at that position have this. It reminds me of a Lampard. They have this vision of seeing players 40 yards away. They see through players. They can almost see in the back of their head.
Also, the way he crosses and passes the ball is unique, because I've never seen a player hit the ball so hard from across, but get it so accurate. He's a special player.
He is very much so. Well, Man City are still in it. Real Madrid were up next. They were playing Atalanta, 3-1 winners. Real Madrid was 3-1 winners at home to Atalanta. Karim Benzema, got a name from the past, still in it, still scoring goals in the 34th minute. Sergio Ramos, from the back, scored a penalty in the 60th minute. And Asensio wrapped up 3 points, or I should say another Champions League win in the 84th minute, after Morel had pulled one back for Atalanta 1 minute earlier in the 83rd minute. So they moved on. And then Wednesday, I'm surprised on this one, Chelsea continuing their run of form under the coach Tuchel, which also, just like Gundogan, we've spent so much time talking about him lately. When are they going to lose under this guy? He's unbelievable. 2-0 winners at home to the leaders in the La Liga, Atletico Madrid. This is something, because Atletico, 3-0 losers on aggregate to Chelsea. Hakim Ziyech back to health, back to goal-scoring form, 34th minute. However, sending off of Stefan Savic in the 81st minute made it easier for Emerson to pop up in extra time, and he gets the victory sealed in the 94th minute. What do you think of Chelsea at this point? I think they're looking, like you mentioned, I think, what was it, the last two broadcasts that we had, you mentioned their attacking style under Tuchel. And some of the rotation has impressed me. He's got more options and he keeps people fresh, and he doesn't get people comfortable with their position, because one week he's got Pulisic and he might be Hudson-Odoi, and then it's going to Varner, and then he's got more options, and he's not afraid to rotate based on the opposition. What's your take this week on Chelsea? Still impressed with them? Still think that they're in it to win it? What do you think?
Yeah, super impressed by Chelsea, and it shows not only is he developing a team that can compete in the Premier League, but also on the European level. You know, that's a different test. You know, if he's now implementing a style against teams who are winning La Liga, you know, who are going to win Serie A, then it shows the depth and experience that he has as a manager, and his ability to change this team. Because the way they play now is fantastic. And look, I'm not a huge fan of rotation, but he's rotating these players very well, and they seem to be adapting and taking on what he's saying on board. Because 1 minute, like you said, you've got Pulisic, you've got Hudson-Odoi, you've got Reece James playing that right wing back role. And not only did they beat Atletico Madrid, but they beat them convincingly. It wasn't as if they scraped a win against the La Liga leaders. They beat them convincingly.
Yeah, they did. They had 12 shots on goal versus 7 for Atletico, and 56% possession in the game. Deserved winners. Chelsea moves on to the next round. That was the first knockout round of the Champions League. Wednesday was up. More Champions League. The remaining games on Wednesday were Bayern Munich, who are one of my favourites to win the Champions League. 2-1 winners at home to Lazio, but 6-2 on aggregate. I don't know what you can say about Robert Lewandowski. He is absolutely having a season to go down in the history books. I didn't think that the bomber, Gerd Müller, would potentially have his record broken. And in the domestic Bundesliga, it looks very much likely, unless he falls off a cliff in the last few games, Lewandowski could be on the verge of beating a record that stood for almost 40 years. So it's absolutely astonishing, his goal-scoring record. Lewandowski, 33rd minute, gets a penalty. He puts them up. It was Choupo-Moting putting them up 2-0 in the 73rd minute. And then, of course, Marco Pavola pulls one back for Lazio. Bayern Munich, my favourites, I'll go on record, for the Champions League. I think they've got so much firepower up front. It's going to be tough. If Lewandowski keeps this goal-scoring form, they're going to be tough to stop. I really believe that. Your take on Bayern, what's your impression on Bayern Munich?
Yeah, just German efficiency, unbelievable side. Lewandowski, one of the best ever. Probably doesn't get the credit he deserves, across Europe, but having the season of his life, player of the year, without a doubt. Complete striker, can hold up the ball, can head, can shoot, can pass, very strong, unbelievable player. Bayern looking awesome, looking very strong. I was wondering how they would adapt with Thiago going to Liverpool, but it hasn't seemed to affect them at all.
They really haven't missed a beat. I was, when they sold him to Liverpool, I'm going, this is a strange decision. How are they going to cope? But they've coped really well. In the domestic league, they've been a bit inconsistent, but Lewandowski, as you said, I mean, what is that? It's something like 35 or 36 goals in 27 or 28 games. I mean,
could be in the 40s, David. I think I heard.
I don't know if I'm counting the last game. Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm counting the last game, but it's absolutely astonishing, and that's just in the Bundesliga. So if you take his goal scoring, including all competitions, he's got to be way up there. He's got to be in the mid to high 40s in all competitions. It's just astonishing. Europa League came around on Thursday, and if Mike was here, he must have been holding his breath, because Arsenal 1-0 losers on the night at home to Olympiacos. They scraped through 3-2 on aggregate. Youssef El Arabi scoring for Olympiacos, but Arsenal move on. So I think he, as an Arsenal fan, he's got to be happy. We won't spend much time as a Leeds and Man U fan. We won't spend much time talking about Arsenal. This is, unless you want to add something to, okay, good.
Let's move swiftly on.
Spurs, this was the shock, I thought. Spurs, 3-0 losers away to Dynamo Zagreb. Your team, St. Albans Dynamo, affiliated using the same badge and everything else as Dynamo Zagreb. This must have been cool for you, but surprising, because I thought, oh my God, with this result, Jose Mourinho had to be on the burners. A hat-trick by Mislav Orsic, 62nd, 82nd, and 106th minute. It was the reason why it went to extra time is on aggregate, 2-0 at full time. It was 2-2 on aggregate. So it was balanced, right? And we're thinking, what happens? So it goes to extra time, and in the 106th minute, Dynamo Zagreb, through the hat-trick by Orsic, they win. I don't know. Dele Alli, he didn't start. He left. He didn't play Bale until the 60th minute. Do you think this was a poor decision to leave Bale on the bench and start Dele Alli? What was the downfall of Spurs in this game, or do you have to really give credit more to Zagreb and Orsic with his hat-trick? I thought they deserved it, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Absolutely. I thought they deserved it. It was a fantastic hat-trick. I looked that player up, Orsic, and what a performance. And, because I play for Dinamo here in Melbourne, I've paid more attention to Dinamo Zagreb and got to know a lot of Croatian people and got to know the Croatian culture. So I've kept a closer eye on them since I've joined this team. And yeah, I mean, Mourinho said it in his post game press conference that it was the attitude of the Tottenham players that let them down rather than the tactical side of it. I didn't see the full game. I just seen the highlights.
Me too.
But if that's the case, then that is an extreme worry. It's never good when a manager comes out publicly and questions the attitude of his own players. I know when managers have done that in teams I've been a part of in the past, as a player, it doesn't make you feel good. Mourinho's done that a lot throughout the years. I think he uses it as a motivational tactic. I don't like it. I don't think it's never good publicly slating your players. But maybe he'll get a reaction from it, who knows. But a deserved one from Dinamo. Fantastic performance, especially after the trouble that they've gone through with their manager, going into getting a prison sentence.
Yeah.
So what a performance, what a result. But again, flaky from Tottenham. It's not that surprising because they tend to do this over the years. They get so far, it looks as if they're going to push for something, and they just never get there. And the Europa League is something that a team like Tottenham should be winning. It's a good competition to win, but they just always seem to fall off.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think he has thrown players under the bus, and maybe, as you said, maybe he's using reverse psychology to try and motivate them. But I don't think the Bales of the world or the Dele Allis of the world, that really works with them. I don't think they're the type of players that will respond really well to that. You might differ on that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, not maybe. Maybe you're right. And it just came to me now. Playing in Zagreb in a game where you need to really dig it out, just put dogs on the field, put players that are just going to run themselves into the ground. You don't need Dele Alli and Gareth Bale. That's not a flashy game. You just need 11 players that are going to just run their socks off, are going to die for the club, and let the flashy players just take a break.
Yeah, and I criticised him last week, if you remember. I thought that the previous week, I saw him walking. I just saw him walking around the pitch for half the game. He literally was not running towards the ball. If it wasn't on his side of the pitch or close to him, he was literally walking. And I thought, how disgusting. You're making millions of dollars or pounds. And yet, you just walk. You're walking around the park. You can do that maybe on a Sunday afternoon, having a piss around. But and you play, you're playing and you're going in for a beer. But come on, the fans deserve more than that. And I thought it was disrespectful. Spurs lose 3-2 on aggregate, and we moved on to your team's game. The first part of the week was kind for you. Paul Pogba scoring in the 48th minute. Now, Rashford, I only saw highlights of the game on this one. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to see the game. Rashford was subbed off. Was that due to injury or just performance?
I'm not sure. I don't know which one it was. Still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, because he was subbed off at half, and then Pogba came on. I think he came on and he scored literally 3 minutes after introduction in the 48th minute with a beautiful goal. I was surprised that I never say his name right. Ibrahimovic came on as sub in the 65th minute for Milan. Surprised on that one. Is he just coming back, Ibrahimovic, from injury?
I think so. He didn't play the first leg. He wasn't in the squad for the first leg. So I do think he's coming back from injury. And he had a couple of chances when he came on. He's a handful. He always makes a difference. And he's actually back in the Swedish national team.
I saw that. It was named, I think, earlier in the week, back in the Swedish side. So I was actually great to see that because we did. I actually mistook his age. I think it was last week, and he is 39 years old. So the standard that he's playing at for a 39-year-old is astonishing.
Incredible.
Absolutely astonishing.
Yeah.
So Congratulations to Manchester United. They are 2-1 winners on aggregate, and we moved on to Friday's game. We have to talk about Leeds United, I'm afraid. I love this game. 2-1 winners away from home at Fulham. I thought Leeds played really well. There was a pocket of the game for maybe 15, 20 minutes when they had pressure. Fulham had pressure, especially when they equalised. Bamford, I thought, played an astonishing game, except he limped off in the 77th minute. He scored a well-taken goal in the 29th minute. Only for our crappy set pieces, we defend lousy. We're the worst team against set pieces, defending-wise, in the entire Premier League. And we have, as a team, been the worst in any division defending against set pieces for the last 10 to 15 years. Joachim Andersen equalised for Fulham, and I thought, oh my God, here we go again. Bamford put that slick ball through to Rafinha. He's been a great revelation signing from Rennes. The Brazilian signed from France in the last transfer window. I thought he was terrific. Leeds, I thought, deserved the 2-1 win. Did you see the game? What was your thoughts on the game? I thought Leeds played pretty well, with the exception of a few defensive slip-ups.
Yeah, no, well-deserved victory from Leeds. I think if they didn't win that game, it would have been a shame for them and for you. Rafinha, Bamford, Dallas still playing well. I'm always keeping an eye on him.
Industrious, amazing.
Industrious, versatile, fit as a fiddle, fast, sharp. Look, they have their cracks, Leeds, and they'll continue to have their cracks. But breath of fresh air for me in the Premier League. Bamford popping up, good performance. So, look, you must be a happy man this week, David.
I'm a really happy man. Definitely, Darren. And we move on. We've got a bunch of games to go. So, Saturday, Brighton Hove Albion putting more misery on Newcastle. Oh, man. Newcastle, it's looking tough for Steve Bruce. Oh, gosh. 3-0 losers away from home to Brighton Hove Albion. Brighton Hove Albion, I'm amazed they are where they are position-wise in the division. Trossard in the third minute of added time in the first half. Danny Welbeck, the old Danny Welbeck that we'd seen previously in the Premier League. And 51st minute, ex-Man U, ex-Arsenal striker. And of course, Neil Maupay, who I think is underrated because he usually scores a ton of goals, whether he's in the Championship or the Premier League. And he scored in the 68th minute, deserved victory. Newcastle, I think they will get relegated. I still believe, even though Fulham lost to Leeds this week, I think Fulham's got enough to pull out of the bottom three. Now, the game, Mike, I wish Mike had been on for this game this week. 3-3, West Ham, Arsenal. Game of the week, in my estimation. What a crazy game. Jesse Lingard for West Ham, ex-Man U striker, absolute corker of a shot in the 15th minute. Jared Bowen caught the defense basically caught napping, 17th minute. He scores, puts them 2-0 up, and then Antonio with a wonderful header. He puts them up 3-0, and at that point you're thinking, they're coasting. What was that like? It was 30-something minute, and it was 3-0. And I was thinking, what's going on? Arsenal are destroyed. And then, all of a sudden, a deflection. It was counted as an own goal for Souček. Initially, I thought it was Antonio, but it was actually... initially I thought it was, Lacazette. But it was ruled in the 38th minute, a Thomas Souček own goal. And then a cross in, Arsenal put a cross in, and Craig Dawson with an absolute beautiful header. The problem is, or actually beautiful strike, the problem is it was going into his own goal. I think that's is that 3 games in a row, a Craig Dawson own goal?
He's a great finisher.
He's a great finisher, but he's scoring for the wrong... He's like scoring own goals like every other game now. And then Lacazette with an absolutely beautiful header pulls it back 3-3. Game of the week. Arsenal, fairly even, 11 shots on goal, 12 shots on goal for West Ham, 63% possession. Arsenal dominated possession, but it didn't give an accurate picture. West Ham, David Moyes has to feel aggrieved that they blew a 3-0 lead. I thought it was an awesome game. Tons of chances, tons of attacking. Did you see the game? What did you think?
Yeah, great game. 6 goals. As a neutral, can't complain. But it's not a good sign for Arsenal. If you're leaking a goal every 10 minutes in the first half of a game, it's bad news. They had plenty of time to come back, and credit to them, they did come back. Lacazette with an outstanding first touch for his strike. I think that was a slight deflection off Souček, but nonetheless a fantastic touch. West Ham will be second to throw away a 3-0 lead. That's the type of performances that don't get you into the Champions League. If you're doing that, I can't see West Ham doing that. But still, to be 3-0 up against Arsenal is, it shows how far West Ham have came to be pushing for a Champions League spot. I'm good to see Lingard. I'm happy that he wasn't getting the game time that he needed at Man United, and it was the right thing for him to leave. And it's good for him to see him get game time, and good for him to get the goals. And I'm a huge fan of Antonio. He's an old-fashioned throwback player. Not the prettiest to watch, but I'm a huge fan of his. But ultimately, good point for Arsenal in the end.
Yeah, and I think if Mike had been here and we'd done the broadcast at half-time, he probably wouldn't want to be on because we would have taken the you-know-what out of him. But a deserved point. I think at the end of the game, with the amount of fight back that they had in the second half, I think fair result, but West Ham really let that slip. Sunday was partial retribution for Spurs. 2-0 winners away from home at Aston Villa. Carlos Vinicius, with the opening goal for Spurs in the 29th minute. He hasn't really featured a lot for the side. I was surprised with that. And then Harry Kane, of course, wrapping up in the 68th minute. Really a poor game. One shot on target for Aston Villa. This is the frustration of me watching Aston Villa as a neutral. Is this really the same side that beat Liverpool 7-2 earlier in the season? And yet, 3-0 losers against Leeds, 2-0 losers against Spurs. They're up and down. They don't have the consistency. To me, this is not redemption for Spurs, even though I have to say Spurs they probably received, excuse my language, a bollocking from Mourinho after the European disaster this week. And at least the effort was more present in this game. Let's move on. We don't want to waste more time on Spurs. Let's move on to the FA Cup games on Saturday. It was Bournemouth loses 3-0 at home to Southampton. Doesn't say a lot for me. Southampton have been really poor, but at least they took their goals really well. They've got, I think it's Musa Janapo, or Jempo, I should say. He scored in the 37th minute. And actually, one of my favourite players over the years that hasn't really been consistent in the Premier League for Southampton, but in the lower divisions, he was a great scorer of goals. Nathan Redmond with a brace in added time at the end of the first half and then the 59th minute. Next game was Everton, 2-0 losers in the FA Cup on Saturday. At home to Manchester City. We won't say much. Guess who it was? Who were the scorers? Gundogan, 84th minute, and Kevin De Bruyne. Nothing more to say. We've already stated how we feel about De Bruyne and Gundogan. They were too dominant. They conveniently knocked out Everton out of the FA Cup. We go on to Sunday's FA Cup games, which I'm afraid weren't kind to your team, but we'll start off with Chelsea, 2-0 winners at home to Sheffield United, who unfortunately under Heckingbottom have not been not really been performing under him. I don't think there's any way out from disaster. They're not really going to retrieve anything from this season, in my estimation. Chelsea continue their run. Interesting what we said before about the rotation. He started Pulisic, Olivier Giroud, I should say, and Mason Mount up front. That's the depth that they've got. We mentioned before Hudson-Odoi, Pulisic. You mentioned Reece James in his role, Hikam Ziyech, Werner. But I think Olivier Giroud, earlier in the season, when he had that run of form and he scored in 3 or 4 goals in a row, then he's back on the bench. So to get that game time, I think it's invaluable for Giroud, and it shows how much depth and rotation. Unfortunately, the first goal scored for Chelsea, or unfortunately, I should say, own goal by Oliver Norwood, and then Ziyech wrapped it up in the 92nd minute. They are 2-0 winners. Now, here's to the game. Leicester at home to your side, Manchester United. I have to say, all the goals scored in the game, I think, overall were good, except the defense fell asleep. Kelechi Iheanacho has been on fire the last few games for Leicester City. I love this guy. I think he's a deadly finisher. He sits and takes second fiddle or plays second fiddle to Jamie Vardy, but not in the last few games. He scores a brace. But what was up with that back pass? Basically, I see the defender, and I can't remember who it was. He's playing a back pass to Dean in goal, and Kelechi Iheanacho literally just zooms in. Was it a poor back pass, or was it just a lightning quick reaction for Iheanacho to score that goal? He scored in the 24th, and he got his brace in the 78th minute when he was left unmarked at the back post. So 2 defensive errors on the brace by Iheanacho. And then, of course, Tielemans in the 52nd minute after Mason Greenwood had tied it up in the 38th minute. What was your take? Poor marking, bad result for Man U. What was your take on the game?
Yeah, look, bad result. FA Cup, you always want to do well in it. Back pass wasn't strong enough. Iheanacho read it well. He's sharp. He's on form. It's good to see from a appreciating a player point of view. The other goal, defensive mistake, lack of concentration. We see these goals time and time again. You know, you work on football on physically, tactically being ready, but these little moments in a game where a defender switches off and the attacking player scores from a set piece from a cross happens time and time again, and just not good enough.
Yeah, you know, as a Leeds United fan, I'm used to us shutting off from set pieces, from crosses, from corners, but I'm surprised, Man U. It literally, I watched that cross coming in, and I'm thinking, there's absolutely nobody on it. He just had a free header. I don't get it. And yeah, you're right. I don't think they reacted very, very well. But credit to Iheanacho. He's on fire. Tielemans is another one that literally, I've seen him be scoring for them from midfield, sort of attacking midfield role, where he just literally scores from 35, 30 yards out, 25 yards out. He's just got a beautiful finish. He just finds that corner. I love that guy. I do not like Leicester as a Leeds fan, but when they're on, I think they can beat any team in the top 6 when they're on. It's the inconsistency as a neutral that frustrates me. Don't worry. You will have your chance at redemption. Unfortunately, it was the FA Cup and you were knocked out. I actually think that the favourites going forward, I think Man City, I think they've got to be right up there. They're in contention for the, not even the treble. They're in the hunts for all 4 competitions that they're still in, which is quite amazing. And I think Leicester City might be my outside shot for an upset. We'll see what happens. Tables so far at the end of the week. Man City in first place, played 30, 71 points. Your team, Darren, don't worry, they're still in second place, 57 points. They only got 1 point over third place, Leicester City, the danger team in the top six. Leicester City, 56 points. Chelsea, 5 points back, played 29, 51 points. West Ham, as you said, still hanging in it. But I have to agree with you finally. I thought that a few games ago, I predicted that West Ham would leapfrog based upon their recent form Chelsea. Since Tuchel's came in, I say I'm going to take back what I said on that. I think Chelsea makes the Champions League. I don't think West Ham is good enough to pull back. Again, they're only 2 points behind Chelsea, so anything is possible. Spurs, surprisingly, in sixth place in the European places, 1 point back in 48 points. Now, that leaves, where is Arsenal? Mike's team, they're in ninth place, only 6 points behind sixth place in ninth, 42 points, and 3 points back in 11th sits my team, Leeds United. While Marco Bielsa refuses to say that we're safe, I'll go on record and saying that Leeds, I don't think that they're going to give, based upon their up and down form, I don't think we're going to lose too many games in a row to give back enough places to be into the bottom three. Leeds, only 5 teams have scored more goals in the division than Leeds. And we sit in 11th, but only 5 teams have scored more than Leeds. But only 4 teams in the entire division have given up more goals. Arsenal, Mike's team, stat, only 4 teams have given up less, and no teams above them have scored less. So the fact is, I don't see Arsenal, unless they start scoring a bunch through Lacazette and Aubameyang, I don't think they'll get even close to the top 6. Your team, I will predict right now, Manchester United, I'm pretty sure, will go on to secure the European places, but there's a lot to play for. Still, what is it, 27 points still up for grabs? Anything can happen. Guys, thank you for tuning in once again. We've got some exciting guests in the next few weeks. We will reveal in the next few days. You'll be excited to know. Mark shared with me. I can't give the spoiler away, but we've got some ex-Premier League players that are going to be on as guests, and we're excited to have them on. So we'll announce that. Keep up to date by checking us out at globalsportschannel.com. Listen to the podcasts on iTunes. And as we said last time, Darren, right, the good cause. Check out the formation and the future about the new platform we're launching called loveathletes.com, as well as Mike heading up the Global Athletes Council. Maybe say one more thing about Love Athletes and the Global Athletes Council, why you think it's so important that our viewers really take interest in that and support athletes around the world.
Yeah, sometimes athletes can slip through the net economically, mentally. Physically, they're always looking after their bodies, trying to be in tip-top condition. But the Love Athletes Council is really making sure that there's a holistic approach surrounding the athlete, making sure that when they finish their career, that they have a life that is both manageable and productive, where they can earn an income and have that mental support to create a pathway that might not be sport related, but can just make sure that their future is held together. So there's a lot of dodgy people in sport. There's a lot of good people as well. So this Love Athletes Council is making sure that we can support athletes to have a life that is secure and happy beyond their playing career.
Yeah, so just to clarify, there's 2 things. It's going to be the Global Athletes Council. That's going to be the voice, so it's not just going to be, we're going to try and work with the big players like the FIFAs of the world, like the International Olympic Committees, like the big federations and the national federations, but we want to have the athletes have more of a voice, not just of representing these federations taking care of the 1% and neglecting the other 99%. And loveathletes.com, as you mentioned, being there to have the support mechanisms for mental health, for financial remuneration, for sponsorship, for jobs, for coaching advice, for independent support. And I think it's an absolute gem of a platform. Loveathletes.com. That will be, we're working on that right now. And we have some amazing Olympians that have joined us, including Donovan Bailey, ex-world record holder in the 100 meters. So I'm excited. If you check us out, you can go to globalsportschannel.com and you can get more details on there. As always, Darren, I fully appreciate your friendship. I know we joke around, we say that, hey, when it comes on here, maybe the pals disappear and we're bitter rivals. But joking aside, I feel that you're a brother from another mother, man, and we're here. We love sport, but we love people, and I always appreciate your input on the program. And have a great, awesome week.
Absolutely, David. Pleasure as always. An Englishman and an Irishman getting on very well.
Yeah, it's just strange times. See what can be achieved in COVID. All good. We'll see you again next week, guys. Have a great week. Thanks for tuning in.
See you guys.
See you again.
Bye.